So, hi, welcome. As you all know, everyone here knows, Emily Marquis. I run a jewelry school in Connecticut, and we also make custom jewelry, right? So, I've been doing that for a decade and a half my life at this point. And so, I know a lot of things about a lot of different skills and techniques and all things jewelry. So, tonight's session is a AMA, or an Ask Me Anything, very popular in the kind of online communities. This AMA concept, and usually it's a professional who kind of knows what they're talking about and just makes themselves available. So I've got a couple questions to get us started. I've got the chat open on my screen, so if anybody has any like subsequent questions or specific questions or stuff that I'm not tackling with my starter questions, zap them in over there and I can read them and kind of go back and forth to them. If the second half of this you guys want to like pop on and ask, out loud, then we can do that too, but no pressure to anybody actually becoming present on my recording if you don't want to. So, Michelle sent us a shit ton of questions to get started, so I'm going to start with those. Do you want to ask any of the ones you didn't submit before I get started?
I think I'm trying to just figure out, like, we're in a new location, we have COVID, we have no festivals, like, what am I doing now? Like, Christmas is on my mind. Like, what strategy? And I guess I've seen you making some decisions for your business. You've had to pivot a lot. And so I think I'd like to hear more about just like, what do we do when we're kind of like starting over? And what can we look for? Like, what opportunities are out there? So I don't know, just some of that along those lines.
Okay, good question. So how do we handle the new version of the holidays, right? Or how do we even get our businesses back to a place where everything that we thought how it was running is no longer the game, right? The rules have all changed on us. A lot of what we have been doing with I've realized that word of mouth is gone, right? Nobody's hanging out wearing their jewelry, talking to their friends, recommending that they go do stuff or they go see stuff. And that really sucks. Like, it really stinks that we're not able to sit and talk about our favorite things and the stuff that we've seen and show stuff. Because, we get to somebody and it might even just be like, oh, you had to see this amazing thing I saw online. I can't have it, but I'd love it, right? So, and that's a natural part of our advertisement that we no longer have access to. A lot of us do sales, so going and setting up your booth and inviting passersby to look at your stuff and check it all out. And now there's so many things that are wrong with that in this next season. You can't have people touching all of your jewelry if they're not going to buy it, because then you have to disinfect every single piece in between everybody touching it. You can't expose yourself to all the passersby in a close enough, distance to actually have a conversation with them and show them the piece, because nobody's eyes work that far away for such beautiful, delicate items. And then just kind of trying to get people out into the world where they're all walking around and meandering and stopping and drinking their coffee. It's over. Like, that's not happening. And yes, of course, they're going to do their outside markets and they're going to say masks for everybody, but I just don't think that it's wickedly practical for us to be putting ourselves into the flu season and into the holiday rush. So what do? One of the things that we've been working on is we set up a Facebook group for all of our friends and family and have encouraged them to host online virtual trunk shows, right? So invite your friends, invite me. I'll provide all the entertainment for the evening. I'll show people jewelry. We'll talk about the pieces. Everybody's going to have a catalog kind of on them, on their phone or whatever, that they can reference and see their favorite stuff. And that's one of the ways that we've kind of started to get that word of mouth back, where somebody can say, okay, here, come join me in my group. We'll all drink wine. We'll play a party game, something fun for us to hang out, and we will all learn about this jewelry that I love from my friend, or this jewelry I love from, my cousin, or whatever that is. It's kind of our attempt at getting that word of mouth amplified again. Other stuff that I think is kind of good ways to navigate the holiday experience is kind of adding a gift wrapping portion to your online shop. Wherever you're having your online shop, have an add-on or include it for free if that's something that you feel you can financially work into your pricing, where you can ship direct to the person who's going to be receiving this piece of jewelry that you've made, this product, by taking out the middleman of them needing to have the item shipped to them so that they can write the note, so that they can package it up, so they can ship it off. It cuts out a lot of weeks and a lot of time spent with the post office and a lot of chance that this item's not going to get to its destination on time. So I think making sure that people know that you are excited to help them get a perfectly wrapped gift sent to the person that they want at no extra charge or at a minimal charge, I think that that will make a big difference in people who want to holiday shop. And I think that holiday shopping is going to be a very big thing this season. And I think the reason why that's going to happen is you have a lot of people who have not seen each other. They're not getting together for anything, and they want to express their love still. They still want to say, I miss you, I'm thinking about you, and they're going to do it doubly so. If they are gifters, they're going to double down on the gifting, I think, because there's going to be a little aspect of guilt kind of associated with their not being present to share. So the presence will amplify. So I'm expecting that a lot of people who are online shopping to be buying twice as much and shipping twice as much. So helping them kind of cut out that process and helping them get the items packed, shipped, beautifully boxed so that their person can open up the package and then put it, wherever they're going to keep, something for the holidays, and then open it up on a video call or something like that. And I think, even suggesting that to your clients, if you're not going to be able to travel, set up a gift exchange on Zoom. And then, they may not even think to set up that special time with somebody, but you could help facilitate that idea. I think that our industry, jewelry, it's a luxury good and it's a gift good, and so I don't think that it's going to really waver over the next couple of months, as people are gearing themselves up for the biggest part of the purchasing year, So I think just giving them opportunities to shop with you, going live with your clients, similar to this, but, going live in your Instagram accounts or your Facebook accounts and making sure that people know that you're accessible and that you're interested in helping them find the right things and that you're open to what is now an alternative old form. It would be alternative, but now it's all the options are, so that they should know that you're ready to do that and that it's, it's complimentary, right? You're available to help them shop in a new way, and you're going to make that as easy as you can for them. So I think that's what I'd recommend. Just trying to just get into it, like become comfortable on the internet, because that's the best way that you're going to reach your clientele. And if you don't have a lot of clientele, you should be working on ways to get yourself, either get your friends to send out messages for you, ask people to share your stuff, and just work on reminding people that you're an option to buy with. All right, that's my answer on that. Okay, I'm gonna take a quick sip. Okay, next question. You asked a lot of questions. I'm trying to. Marketing, branding, and taxes with an emoji that looks very stressed. Okay. It's not really a question. It's more of a statement about things to talk about, but I got you. Those are two totally different questions. Let's talk about taxes. Charge everybody tax if you're supposed to be charging them tax. It's really not that hard, and you're going to have to pay somebody for it. When it comes to actually doing your finances, I'm not really in charge of that. I let Cal and our CPA be in charge of that. And I sent out from my last message our CPA's information, and I'm happy to give her as a recommendation to anybody who is shopping around to get some help. There's a few ways to kind of go about having a CPA help you. You can have them get involved in January, either as a, okay, it's January and in a couple months I need to pay all my taxes. Here's my pile. Please make sense of it. Or you can get a CPA involved at any point in the year, hopefully at the beginning of the year, where they can kind of help you organize your game plan, get documents set up, get patterns set up where they're helping you for that first year, really do it all right, right? So this is how we're going to keep track of inventory. Here's how we're going to keep track of expenses. Here are, you know, your actual income. And then they can give you reports and teach you how to read your reports. And after a year or so, they can either take a step back and let you maintain that, and they just check in at the end of the year when it's time to do your annual taxes, or every quarter because you're doing quarterly taxes, or they can continue to help you maintain it if it's a financial, you know, benefit. You can pay your CPA. It's a business expense. So that's something that you can write off at the end. I don't know. I mean, it's a bit, I assume it's like full write-off, but I'm not 100% sure. That's a question for my CPA. But that's what I would say. My recommendation, I was really in over my head with taxes. I didn't get it. I didn't pay my sales taxes the first year, and I had to go and pay all those in the second year. It was kind of a mess, and I was very overwhelmed by it. So once we had somebody do that like overhaul where they got all of our bills in order at the beginning of the year, we then got in with a CPA and kind of unraveled all of the scariness that is the accounting and numbers. And really, it's not that scary. It's just more helpful when somebody who is educated in numbers can lay it out for you so that you understand what you're looking at and what needs to be done. And it's really also not crazy expensive to have somebody help maintain your numbers, you know, or shouldn't be crazy expensive, you know, if you shop around. Okay. Marketing and branding. Oh, hold on. I got a question. Oh, yeah. Okay. So somebody wanted me to mention how property tax works with all of your stuff. Each state, I think, most states have property taxes, and what that means is your business owns things, right? You own a jeweler's bench, you own a rolling mill, you own a torch, and all of those things can be taxed annually with a mill rate. So if your state operates that way, keeping an inventory is super important, keeping a value of everything that you buy in an Excel document. I bought a hammer, it was $26. I bought it in March 2017, right? Having a list like that of your inventory, not saying, I bought this nail and I used it to make a punch. Nobody cares about the nail, right? It's really about those ticket items that really amass. Once you have 30 hammers and each one costs you $5, that's a shit ton of money that the state wants to tax. And so something that we did to keep on top of that is I created a Google form document. And Google form is just like a Google Sheet, just like Google Docs. It's something that's available within your Gmail suite. And Google Forms lets you create a questionnaire, and you can say item name, date purchased, how much was it, is it renewable, is it, you know, does it get wasted up, used up, right? Consumable items. And you can put in all those little details and then press submit, and then it puts it into an Excel document that you can reference later. So without having to open up an Excel document every time and make sure that you're, erasing your brain with looking at the Excel document, you can just fill out a quick, questionnaire with the right info, and it will handle it, and you can check it out later. So that's what we do whenever anything new comes into the shop that needs to be put in inventory. We put it all through our Google form system. I also do that to keep track of the inventory that I have at our display location. So in July, we set up a display in Clinton at an antiques mall. And if you guys haven't been to an antiques mall before, basically it's a big facility, thousands and thousands of square feet, run by a staff for shopping through, and each stall or square footage or display case is owned or rented by individual sellers or businesses. And so it's an opportunity that we found where we could have a display of our jewelry available to the public, 7 days a week, with a cashier present to take stuff out of the cabinet, show it to them, bring it to the sales register, and we pay them a monthly fee. And so that means a good chunk of our jewelry inventory is hanging out over there for sale to the public, which is great for us because we can run our school, we can run our online system, and we can also point people to a brick and mortar where they can look and shop our collection without us exposing ourselves to the public, to just being present, and they, kind of taking up our time doing a sales day, right? So that for us, we keep track of even like a photo. You can put in your Google form a photo upload of the item when it goes in there. So when it comes to my insurance that I have that covers all of our inventory, I can say, yep, this item was put in here on this day, and they got robbed and they didn't have insurance, and so I need you guys to cover the costs of that. That's something about your insurance company, like your jewelry businesses should have insurance. And it's really nice to have an open dialogue with them about what you have, how they can help you, what they can cover. And one of the neat things about it is most jewelry policies at like the lowest level will cover if your stuff is on consignment, if your stuff is visiting, like if you shipped it to somebody to photograph, if you are traveling with a piece of jewelry to bring it somewhere to show to somebody and then traveling to bring it back, they've got insurance that covers how much you as the business owner can be carrying on your person at any given time. They'll cover insurance for USPS if you ship through their portal with USPS. So there's a lot of cool ways. I would check out Jewelers Mutual. If you haven't, I can give you a link to the to a rep that we know. He does kind of the Northeast section, but he could also connect you with a rep for any part of the US because it's a national company. But that's an affordable thing to invest in, especially once you have a certain amount of tools inventory and jewelry inventory. And if you start to take on consignment situations where you're giving your jewelry out to people to cover. We had a write-in question. Tell us more about how you first started your metalsmithing journey. Ooh, we're gonna get woo-woo. What was the first piece of jewelry you made? And then how about the first piece you made that you felt really proud of? Okay, so the reason I got into jewelry was because I wanted to be a painter, and that came, in my mid-teens when I was starting to get into art and kind of enjoying creating 2D paintings. And my uncle, who is a goldsmith, he told me that if I wanted to be an artist when I grew up, that I should be a goldsmith because painters don't make any money. And that if I wanted to support myself, I should probably be a goldsmith. And that advice came to me when I was 14 or 15 years old. And it kind of stuck with me because it was tied in with something that made a lot of sense to me. And so this philosophy has kept true all the way to this point. He said that a goldsmith always had a job, regardless of what the economy was doing, if they were talented enough. And what he meant with that was that if you were good enough to make fine jewelry, then you would be able to make people beautiful things when the economy was good, when people were buying, when luxuries are high. But then also when the economy dives, when gold goes up, when people can't afford to create new things, you can take their old things, melt them down, recreate them, and make beautiful things. You can fix their broken jewelry so that they can continue to wear them. You can, become useful in a repair and kind of recreation factor, right? It doesn't always have to be here, buy my new design. It can be, oh, I can be useful. I can fix that for you. And then the fact that pretty much at all times people need wedding bands. At the end of the day, if you can make a wedding band, you can probably make some money in this industry, right? So that idea of always being able to follow the economy and become useful in my career as an artist, from both a fix and salvage all the way to luxury creations, that really spoke to me. And there was a practicality to that and how my career could ebb and flow and I'd have job security regardless of where I was at. And so with that very heavy advice to a starry-eyed young teenager, I decided that I was going to become a goldsmith. And so I went to jewelry school for that, and that was fine. And then I moved down to DC, and my uncle had just started a jewelry school there, and he kind of continued to teach me all things bench jewelry and goldsmithing. And then I got a bench jeweler job where I learned a lot about golds and platinums and diamonds and sapphires, kind of through an education through work, right? So it wasn't exactly an apprenticeship because it was paid. I had a salary, and but I was also expected to learn because I was the lowest person on the totem pole. So that's kind of how I got here. Now, first piece of jewelry I made, I think everybody makes a piece of beaded something or other, macrame. But if we're talking about silver jewelry, I'm sure I made something my freshman year of college that was wearable. We made a lot of like found jewelry because silver was starting to be super expensive. And by the time I graduated college, silver was $55 an ounce. So so I made stuff out of like old toys made with plastic with like silver and copper components. And it was a lot of like found art that first year because I just couldn't afford materials to make anything out of. The first piece of jewelry I sold my freshman year of college, I sold on Etsy to a woman in Australia, and I had no idea. Like, she found me, she bought this like really cool little forged pendant doodad that, was way too thin, sharp, probably cut her pretty bad. It was not fantastic, but that was that first like piece of jewelry where like, ooh, somebody from another country bought this and I get to mail it to them, and oh, how cool is that, right? So I feel like that's that initial pride, that holy crap, somebody bought this and they don't know me pride. So we'll stick with that. I've made a lot of things that I'm proud of over the years, but first sale gets some points. Now I'm gonna get into something different. What's the diamond process like? How can you get more exposure to more dollar sign clients? Those are two questions. Okay, so the diamond process. For me, I've got a diamond guy in New York that came recommended, which is, I think, how a lot of vendors work, is somebody else you trust recommends them, and then you start your own dynamic. So my diamond guy was recommended to me, and my first process with him was basically, I was just giving somebody the link to this chat, sorry. Our process was, I said to him, my client has this budget, $1,500, right? And he wants X size, let's say 4.5 millimeters. What's the best you can find me? What's the best I can do? Now for me, my diamond guy will try to give me the very highest quality stone just under the budget like change. So the way that diamonds work is they are graded with colors, clarity, and the cut and the amount of stone, right? So usually when you have a budget, you're trying to figure out, well, how can I most apply that budget in a way that, you know, if I bring this knob up here and I bring this one down, if, you know, how can you fuss with it just right so that the product that you're buying is matching your budget for your client to make them happy? And that for me is something that I find really valuable to give to my clients is, let's get you the best we can get without compromising by spending too much or spending, you know, it on the wrong part. And my guy knows that. And so if he says, okay, well, this is included, you know, there's inclusions, you can see them, but if you're going to prong set it, this can be hidden by a prong, or this could be hidden by a bezel, or the way that this is cut not quite perfectly is visible only this way. So there's ways to, once you have somebody who really understands what diamonds look like and how they can be set and used in jewelry, you can figure out what faces up like $1 million, right? So when we're talking about facing up, we're talking about like looking at the top of the diamond. Does it look beautiful? Is my client going to be able to see the thing that's wrong with them? Most people who have like a sub $3,000 diamond budget, first of all, they don't really know what they're talking about. They just want it to look pretty. And that's what your job is to help them do. How can you best spend that money on something that's going to look really good to their partner, to themselves? Once you get into like what I would call the $10,000 to $15,000 diamond budget, that's when people start to get really finicky about the GIA report. They're concerned with whether or not they can see it under a microscope. Like, is there fluorescence? I don't know. I don't know what fluorescence looks like to the naked eye. That's not my job. But those people who have those questions usually have a budget that's, you know, more than your rent. They're no longer concerned with the bounds of what money means, and they would like to just have the best of the best, and that's their goal. And so when I'm searching for a diamond for my client, I'm trying to figure out what is the very best that we can do with this money without going over your budget, while also managing expectations. If we make it a 0.5 millimeter smaller, can we increase the color and clarity? Those are the kinds of things that I'm trying to figure out during my diamond process. And typically I just kind of give a range, like a budget, a size, a shape to my diamond guy. And I say, this is what we're looking for. And he says, I got this option and I got this option. And this one is a little bit bigger, but this one has a little bit more inclusions and is actually prettier to me, you know. And that's kind of how I make my decisions. I get photos from him and use his judgment as somebody who sees them all the time, as somebody who knows a heck of a lot better what my client might want than I really would be able to guess, because I'm not spending my entire life dedicated to the diamond industry. One thing about diamonds that I will say is that I do not really mark up diamonds when I'm selling them to clients. My typical process for that is you're buying a diamond with me. I might just have you send cash or your check or whatever, your certified check, to my diamond guy directly. You're going to buy the diamond. He's going to ship me the stone. I will set the stone and give it to you. The same way with my higher end garnets, sapphires. Sometimes I will send my clients directly to the stone sellers, say, please buy this stone from them, have them send it to me, and I will set it, and then I will give it to you. I think there's a transparency there that clients really enjoy, knowing that you're not trying to pull the wool over their eyes about how much it's really going to cost or where it came from. The fact that they got to buy the stone themselves usually makes people feel involved and excited. So for me, I don't have to deal with the purchase. I don't have to run the thing through my books. I don't have to decide 10 or 15% what's the appropriate amount to take from somebody. So for me, if the stones are over $500, I usually I don't really mark them up. I just say, okay, well, the stone was this much. Maybe I tag on $50 to cover shipping or whatever it is that I'm going to have to pay for through that. Do I need any particular credentials to buy through a diamond guy? Well, I guess not. I mean, as I said, I send my clients to finish the transaction with my guy. I've never had to provide him with anything that said that I was official. What I will say is that once you have a relationship with a sapphire dealer or a diamond dealer, you can start to get stuff on memo, and that credential is really trust. Usually there's a net 30 or a net 60 or return me my fucking diamonds in 10 days or else, you know, it's usually not that intense, but you can, once you have a relationship with your stone dealers, they will just send you your stones and say, well, check it out, look at it, see if it's going to work for you. If you don't like it, send it back, right? So that's really useful, especially if you're buying like Melly or certain small pieces, or you're trying to design something and you kind of just want to get the stones in hand to sell to a client because they want to see it with their eyes. Once you get on memo with your casting company, your stone company, that's really the only credential that matters, is that trust, where they go, this person's going to probably buy the stone that they're asking for. This is worth my while to let this be out of my inventory. I trust them, and I'd like to help them make that sale. So that's really what I would recommend, is just don't screw those guys over. Always respond, always be like proactive with your conversations with stone dealers like that. And that way they'll start to trust you and want to help you out when it's time to find that really good deal, or let you see something that just can't be seen through the computer. Yeah. Okay. So that's diamonds, that's sapphires, that's garnets. All of those like bigger, when we're talking about those, we're talking about center stones, right? The big stones that go in the fancy rings that clients want to give to their partners. When it comes to little stones, most people won't do that for less than a couple carats. So you'd have to be buying so many tiny stones that they're like, oh yeah, sure, here, have $5,000 worth of stones you're probably going to buy. How can you get more exposure to dollar sign clients? That's a good question. If I'm trying to attract clients with money to burn, which I think is a great place to be if you're selling jewelry, you want people to want to spend with you, right? That's part of your career, is making and selling jewelry. So attracting clients who have disposable income to spend on jewelry is kind of a twofold thing. One, you have to be making stuff that costs more. And if you can't afford to make it, you should be putting it into their minds, right? So let's say I make a silver bracelet. It's probably going to retail at $175, but I really want to make that bracelet in 14 karat gold. Well, now I won't stop talking about wanting to make that bracelet in 14 karat gold. I talk about how much it would cost if somebody wanted to budget that. I make it available if somebody wanted to do payment plans for that. Maybe if somebody really wanted to buy it, I might give them a discount to make that first gold bracelet. These are the little things that I might do as I'm building up my business to attract clients who want to be buying higher ticket items. And what that is going to do is, the second I make the first piece, I've got a picture. I'm going to take so many pictures before they get that thing, because this way I can now advertise that I have made this high ticket item. I'm not just spouting off, wishes about wanting to make these things, I'm doing it. And so by letting somebody essentially pay to buy something from you, they buy the gold thing, they buy the high-end thing. Well, now you get to keep the photo, you get to keep the advertising, you get to keep the story. Hey guys, I made this gold thing. You can also buy this gold thing if you want, because look, I know how to make it. I've proven to you that I know how to make it. And maybe for the next 3 years, one of your clients is pining over it, and then they finally have a reason to celebrate, and they reach out to you and go, remember a couple years ago when you made that bracelet, but you made it in gold? I want that, except I would like it with these stones on it. And that kind of open dialogue with your clients of letting them fantasize with you, taking them on the journey, letting them be a part of the discovery process, of the fantasy process, of the design process. I feel like that's the best way to attract somebody and then turn that into a sale when your client is ready. You get them fantasizing about that thing that you really want to make until they absolutely have to buy it from you so that they can see it made. I think that technique works, and I think it also may not sometimes sell the exact thing you thought you were going to be making, but somebody goes, okay, I love that idea, but what if we did it in rose gold? And what if we had it hanging from a necklace, and instead of a bracelet, it was like an accent to a necklace or something like that. When you open up yourself during your design process to the people who are watching you create and the people who are shopping with you, they feel like they can come into your design process a little bit and get excited with you about things. And then that is how you're more likely to cater a custom sale in a higher market range, I think. And that really works, because once you start to fantasize with your clients, you start to make bigger things with your clients, you're following that path, but you're still kind of controlling it in a sense of, okay, well, we make things that look like this. This is my design aesthetic. These are the techniques I like to use. These are the stones I like to use. And you're getting those custom jobs to kind of weave into what it is that you like to make and what you like to advertise. And then those are designs, those custom pieces are designs that you can double down, you can slightly adjust. Now they're part of your line. Now they're an offering that you have. Now there's something you can reference and say, oh yeah, we can definitely do that. I did something like that in 18 karat, last year, and my client loved it, and I can show you photos, So I feel like building up the concepts is the best way to start attracting people to spend more money on single items. I think the more that you make things that are more expensive, the more likely people are to buy things that are more expensive who may not have bought with you before, because your portfolio speaks for itself in the quality of work that you can provide them, right? That's when word of mouth is kind of just, you're just showing them, right? You don't have to say anything. They've seen that you can do it. And then that kind of self perpetuates as things go on, and people start to say naturally, like, oh, remember when you were talking about this? I'm ready. I want to buy that thing from you. So I think very much right now, the internet lets us have that dialogue through our stories, through our posts, through our email blasts. And I think that that's really very, very helpful to navigate that conversation. Next question. And remember, guys, if you guys have questions, or if I'm just, hitting on something just a little bit and you want to know more information about half of the thought that I expressed, just type it in the chat and I can read it on the screen, or you can DM me, or however you want to ask those questions. How do I streamline more of my work? Streamlining. So I take that question to be, how do I make myself more efficient? How do I factory, what's the word? I always forget what that's called. It's assembly line. Or that question could mean, how do I narrow down what I'm offering? I don't really know. So Michelle, if you want to tell me if it's A or B, that would be really helpful. I can tackle both concepts. So I guess I'll just
I
start.
can comment, and you don't have to answer just my questions.
Oh, well,
I think all those
I'm
things,
starting at the
yes.
top of the list.
I know, and I didn't know, like, I just threw out as many questions as I had in my head, which is always a lot. I think I'm constantly like looking at, I want to hone in on the things that are my aesthetic, that I do by hand, and then find other places where I can outsource. Like, for instance, we did the thing on casting recently, and I just sent out 4 different parts of things that I do so that I don't have to spend my time on that. I have children in distance learning, so I'm like doing all the things all at the same time. But like, I think specifically like components for like the earring latches that I make by hand, like, is there a way that these things can be bought or made in a simpler way, or how do I find those things, I guess? I don't know if that helped at all.
Okay. Do you have an account with Stellar?
No.
Do you have
That's
a bit?
it. That's the answer.
Let's talk about findings and parts and pieces first. There's a lot of things that can be made in bulk. Okay, if you wanted to make a bunch of ear wires and you could make a jig, right? So you take a piece of wood and you slap a couple nails in there, like brad nails, not stuff with like a head, but like just a thin nail with like a rounded top, and then you can just wrap your wire, clip it, wrap the wire, clip it, set all those up. And then that's something you could mindlessly do while watching TV, while, you don't have to be paying attention to that kind of activity. And then later you can, when you are ready to pay attention, you can use a cupper to smooth out the part that goes in the ear. You can lightly hammer them all in bulk. And what I would do when so one of my part-time jobs, back in like 2014, 2015, is I was hired by a jeweler to be an assistant, but also to streamline her process, because she was making literally everything one of a kind every time. And not because she was making things one of a kind, but she was literally start to finish one item the first time. And then the second time that it got ordered, she would make it all again. And that was just so much time. And I really don't believe that a jeweler can make a career out of making things one of a kind every time. Yes, there are some fantastical, very high-end designers who have a team of 30 people under them setting and polishing and casting, and they make one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry that cost more than a house. And that's not who we're talking about here. I'm talking about the average independent designer who maybe has a business partner, but who's probably on their own doing this creation from start to finish. You need to employ a bit of an assembly line with your parts and pieces. So making jigs, making components that are universal. So for me, there's like 3 or 4 jump ring sizes and gauges that I use for almost everything. And I will try my very best to not employ a new style of jump ring or a new dimension of something unless I absolutely must for the new design that I'm making. So when I'm looking at a new way to do something, I say, okay, well, these are the parts and pieces that I already have to work with. Is there a way that I can use that jump ring? Is there a way that I could use that bezel that I could apply into this new design? When it comes to actual findings, I don't make a lot of my findings myself very often unless there's something about the piece of jewelry that is so special that it really deserves hours of my time to invest into creating a very special box clasp or a very special hinge or something that just can't possibly be bought. I use Stellar for my findings. There may be other companies, but if you have a business license as a jewelry business, you probably should have one, because write-offs. You can buy from them. You can buy findings. You can buy settings. So we just made a brooch that is mostly, handmade out of gold with 10 stones around it. I don't have the bezel block small enough to make those settings, and I didn't want to buy the amount of tube that I needed to make those settings. So I bought the settings, and you know what? When you buy a setting, the seed is already cut in it. So then you don't have to sit there and go, okay, like, am I cutting this deep enough? No, they're all the same height, right? So then it came time, it's a brooch. I bought the pin because I didn't feel like pulling the brooch pin and then filing and sanding and drilling the hole and flattening it and then making the little U to like put the holes in to rivet it together. So I bought it. It was $30 in gold, and I didn't have to engineer any part of it. What I did engineer was the hook, because I don't like the way that their hooks look, right? The part that the clasp. Anyways, so I made that because I knew that that was a simple solder job with some thin gauge wire, curl it over, very cute, right? But you can buy the parts and pieces that you may just want to attach, and typically they're going to be probably better engineered than the thing that you could have made. If I was going to make a bunch of U-shaped clasps for, I know, for example, your pieces are, they all have those little U's and they all have their little hinges. I would find something that I could wrap that material around to make jump rings that are half the size of the U I need to make, and then saw it straight down the center, and then make 40 of them and just leave them there off the side in a basket, you know, and say, okay, these are my earring hinges. I have earring hinges, you know, and then make, if you can, make the thing that holds the hinge and make the thing that holds the clasp out of the same material, so that these ones just get a hole drilled in it and this one just gets tightened a little bit. But when I worked for this woman, that's kind of what I did to every single one of her projects. Was I looked for ways to slightly adjust materials so that they could be the same material. Instead of buying 15 different gauges of round wire, can we buy 6 different gauges of round wire? Because we made this a little bit bigger, we made that a little bit smaller. I sat there and I made jigs for every single piece that you needed to learn how to make in succession. I organized the whole studio to have boxes of parts and pieces that you could reference. You just go, oh, I need a silver earring hinge. I'm going to grab it here. I need a silver earring wire for that hinge. It's already cut here. And when you start to make production work, you'll know what a good batch is. You'll say, if I make 30 of these, that'll last me 2 months before I need to make these again. With silver parts and pieces, usually making them in a large batch makes sense. If you're doing something in gold, like I was making this gold brooch, I don't need any amount of gold brooch parts and pieces in stock ever. And when I do need it, I know that I can order it and have it delivered to me the next day. So I'm just going to buy it because it's a lot easier than trying to finagle making it. And I think that as you start to make your design processes, to streamline them, you need to go, how many times do I expect to make this in the next 6 months? Is it a lot or is it never again? You know, and then decide, how does this piece need to be engineered to be the most effective? And so, you know, for me, what that looks like is looking at all my sales data and saying, okay, well, the last 2 years I sold X, Y, and Z the most of. These were the most popular things. And then I can say, chances are high I'm going to sell at least half, if not more. So I'm going to make half, and I'm going to have them ready in the wings. And maybe the variation is what stone they're in. So I'm going to have all the parts and pieces to make those. And then last minute, we throw the stone in and we go from there. So I think kind of anticipating the ways that things get varied, or cutting down the ways that things can be variable, will really help streamline the amount of stuff that you have. I do believe that casting and CAD is super helpful when you're trying to make multiple pieces, and you really can make stuff that's very small and have it molded. You could even have, if you knew that one of your frames was going to be an earring, always going to be an earring, never not going to be an earring, you could actually put the hinge parts, not the moving part, but the hinged parts, you could put those onto your thing and send them to be cast, so that when it came into you, all you had to do was work hard in those little bits, which you'd have to do after you soldered them on anyways. So thinking about ways to maximize the casting process is also really good. Any tips on getting started in gold? I'm interested in making solid gold pieces or adding gold to silver pieces. It's expensive and I'm nervous to start experimenting and learning. Yeah, me too. The first time that I made gold jewelry was with my uncle, and I had gone to college, and silver was expensive, and they weren't teaching us how to set stones or do gold work. They were kind of barely teaching us how to do silver work, and so that was a pretty, it was disappointing for me to have tried to call myself a goldsmith and then never actually worked in gold. And what I can promise you is the first thing that you should do is get a piece of gold and scratch it. Knock it around a little bit, drop it on the floor. Demystify the metal, I think is what I would say that you should do. If you are trying to get over a very scary, very expensive little thing, scratch it up a little, ruin it, bring it down a notch. Remind yourself that it's just metal and that you can treat it pretty much all the same ways that you treat silver, and kind of start making with that. Now, that's the mystical quality, right? When you're talking about how to add gold into your pieces, how to create pieces in gold, I usually do not make a gold piece unless it's paid for. So I don't just speculate on gold. Maybe 1 out of 10 pieces I speculate. I think people might want to buy this. Mostly what I'm doing is I am telling people I'd like to make this in gold. Here is how much it will cost in gold. If you're interested, this is how much it will be. And the way I calculate that is by taking a look at the materials that I use to make that piece in silver, or making the piece in silver so that I can say, look at this beautiful ring. Wouldn't this be great in 18 karat yellow? That kind of way to give them a visual while you're also, for yourself, figuring out how much that item will cost. And then you can advertise, if you'd like to buy this, this is how much it will cost. Now, is there a chance that you're wrong with how much it costs and it costs a little bit more and your profit margin is a little shorter? Super possible. But at least your first piece will be bought at a break even or a profit where you're not paying to learn on the gold material. You're getting somebody to pay you to learn how to make that piece. If you wanted to start adding accents of gold to your metal, that is a fantastic way to increase your design's value and to add drama, right? So there's 2 kind of ways to easily add drama to your jewelry work, and that is metal, 2 different kinds of metal, gold and silver, those color tones, and then liver of sulfur, right? So adding drama through blackening or antiquing your work. And actually, in my opinion, the best blend is both of those together, because the black silver and the bright yellow gold really says, this is gold, this is not. Look at this focal piece that I've added. I think that really pops, and I think that you can add a little hinge of gold. You can add a bale of gold. You can just do a very popular thing I do with my students is when they are deciding to do their bezel project, we buy the gold material for the bezel and solder it on a silver plate. That's super common for when people are trying to just add some gold into their routine. I think that a gold bezel is a really great first way to introduce that color play into your pieces. The density of gold is higher than silver, so when you are weighing a piece of silver, you can find conversion charts online to figure out what it would weigh in various gold alloys. Yes, that's true. It's a pretty simple conversion. You do have to make sure that you're doing the actual carat. You can't just say it's gold. It has to be 14 karat gold, 18 karat gold, 22 karat gold. They all have different weights, including things like platinum and palladium. They also, there's conversion charts from everything from copper and brass to platinum and palladium. What solder would you use for that kind of mixing, gold or silver, when soldering together? Good question. So when I am adding a piece to something else, you've probably made the piece before, right? So if I was going to be doing something this way, I probably would have done this technique already with silver, and now I'm just changing the metal out. And what I would recommend is think about the last time you made this, where the solder all ended up. Where did you have to clean all the solder off of, right? If most of your solder was on the thing that is going to be silver, then I would use the silver solder. But if most of the solder is going to be on the thing that is gold, I would use gold solder. So in the case of taking a 14 karat piece of rectangle wire as a bezel and putting it onto a back plate of silver, I would solder my gold wire, my gold bezel, to itself with 14 karat gold hard solder. Then I would take the whole bezel and solder it to the plate with silver solder, because most of my solder is going to be around that rim, and I'm going to clean it up or it's going to be hidden. So it's not going to flow up onto my bezel naturally. If I was going to be soldering a gold ball onto a silver piece, I would probably use a little bit of silver gold in a well. But you might also want to use gold, because sometimes on a little ball, the metal actually encircles the ball. I don't know if you guys kind of have much practice soldering little balls into things. It's a very popular design technique, but if you really watch it, because of the way that the sphere is designed, capillary attraction completely encompasses the ball. And so more often than not, the solder is actually flowing all over the surface. So I would be inclined to use gold solder on a gold ball when attaching it to a sheet of metal, because of the way that it wants to flow. So there's just ways that when you watch these techniques happen in the same metal, and you know where the solder's ending up, you know where it's flowing, right? It's flowing to the hottest piece. Typically it's flowing to the most, the easiest line to pass, right? The path of least resistance. I would make my solder decisions off of that knowledge. So don't go into it blindly. Have done the technique before. Know what it is that you're trying to accomplish and how your metal is going to react to that. And then you can make an educated decision on how you're going to be applying the specific solders. Just a note on solders, I am a huge supporter of using hard solder for almost everything that you can get away with, and then not introducing medium or easy solder unless you absolutely have to. One of the big things about that is, especially when you get into gold carats, the lower melting temperature alloys have a significant color change. Usually with silver solders that are medium or easy, you don't really notice it until it's been tarnished. But with gold, that color change is prevalent from the polish. Like the day one, you can tell if you were using a low alloy solder to solder your piece together. So I would recommend that everybody practices making their pieces with hard solder as much as possible, because that torch control will help you as you get better and as you escalate your skills. So let's see. How do you set a thick cast bezel? Sarah asked us this, and I thought I tried to clarify the difference between a thick cast bezel and just a thick bezel, but I don't really know if there's a difference between something being cast or just thick. For me, all of my bezels are 1 millimeter or thicker. Sometimes 0.75 millimeters, but I try to avoid that. So when I'm doing a heavy bezel, that's what kind of the professional industry refers to as a heavy bezel. I'm using a hammer and a punch to set my stone. And the first thing that I do is I'm going to cut a bevel around it with my file. So because this wire, it's rectangular wire, because it's so thick, it's very hard to just, you can't shove it over, you can't push it. There's no brass bezel pusher in the world that is strong enough to just push over 1 millimeter wire. So what I like to do is I kind of file off that outside corner. So if you're looking at a bezel, you've got, okay, if this is just the bezel wall, you've got the inside and you've got the outside. So this outside has a right angle, and I would file that off at a 45-degree angle all the way around, and that's called a chamfer or a bevel, B-E-V-E-L. And I would file that in just enough to thin out that very top of my material, but also give my punch It's a piece of steel, like a tool. The punch is not a cutting tool, it is a hammering tool, and I'm going to hit it with my chasing hammer, sending the force from my chasing hammer through the steel punch into the metal at a very dedicated small location. So as I'm working, I'm hitting and I'm moving that punch across that bevel, and it's folding over that metal onto my stone. And so that's how I'm going to be setting something that is heavy or thicker than bezel wire. So not really hyper familiar, but I think most bezel wire is like a 0.3 millimeter or 0.51 millimeter. Wicked thin stuff. You do not need a punch to set it. You can kind of rock and roll it with some plastic or brass. But when you get into these thicker things, you have to be using heavier force. And so that's when I employ tools. There aren't a lot of punches available to buy online. So that's kind of where it starts to get tricky. But what I can recommend is I have a video on my Instagram that if anybody asks, I can forward it to them, where I just take a 10-penny nail, which is like a 3-inch steel nail, and it's not covered with any kind of crap. It's just steel. It could rust, pretty easily. And I chop the head of the nail off, and I chop the tip of the nail off, and I just lightly sand and file and polish it into a punch shape. And then that's what I use for almost all my stone setting, is just a 10-penny nail that's been modified to be the shape that I want. And I've got 10 or 15 of them hanging around. What I don't do is I don't heat temper them. So if you were to be making chasing tools from scratch for texturing or for moving metal, you might temper them with heat. It's a whole process that I won't get into, but you can harden the steel with heat. But you wouldn't want to do that to a punch, because you want it to be a little softer. So if it happened to hit your stone, it's not rock hard. It's still kind of like a softer steel metal. And I know it's hard to believe that steel can somehow be soft enough to not ruin your stone, but it can be. Steel can be soft and get very fucked up and damaged from whatever you're hitting it on. So that's kind of how I prefer to have my punches be, because I don't want to ruin anything that I might slip with while I'm hammering and moving stuff around. So that is how I do that. And I've got little videos and little tips and tricks on that whole process. And Michelle has sort of begged and encouraged me to make a video on all things bezel setting. So I'm kind of working on what that's going to look like. And hopefully it's kind of more of an info video that you can watch with, here are the techniques, here's how I do all these things from scratch, here's why I do it. And then here you can go and give it a shot and holler at me if you've got questions. I usually teach people how to do heavy bezel setting from day one, pestering us. So from day one, Michelle, you've been generously encouraging me to make these videos. I'm sorry. Oh. So I think that heavy bezel setting really does make a more elegant piece at the end of the day. If the structure that you're putting the bezel on can handle it. I think that most pendants, most rings look really good with a heavy bezel. And I think that learning how to do that really kind of opens up a broad world of designing. So if you guys ever have more questions about that or want to see a drawing of what I just explained, just ask and I can get out a pen and paper and kind of explain that a little bit more thoroughly. Or maybe there will be a video that you can watch me make bezels in all the different forms. That is something that is coming soon. I think I've run out of questions, but I still have a few more minutes. If anybody wants to holler, ask some specific questions, want me to go over anything, I will lend the floor to you for a minute. I don't know if it's my crickets that I'm hearing or yours, but so I guess, I've been talking for like an hour and 15 minutes. So let's see. Any tips for stimulating creativity? Study stuff. look at other people's work. I know for me, I like to study antique things and try to figure out how they have been crafted, created, exactly what it was, the mechanisms and tools that they used to get that going, and see if there's some way that I can implement that skill into the work that I'm doing. I know that I am greatly inspired by antique work, so I go and study antique jewelry. So if you're trying to get excited about what to make next, or you're having designer's block, or you just don't know what skill you want to add, I would recommend finding a type of jewelry that you really like, an era, and studying that era and getting out your pen and looking up stuff. I go on eBay a lot and study what's available for sale, because sometimes, there's stuff that's a little funkier, a little more unique, just kind of bumming around the antiques department of eBay, than actually finding something on a properly curated Instagram or Pinterest. Like the other day, I found that very silly. There's a woman, and I kind of want to mail her a camera, because she has taken her scanning bed on her copier printer and is using that to take all the images and digitally upload them to her eBay. So there were some pretty fascinating pieces, but it just got me thinking about kind of how much ingenuity she had to do to like come up with this, like, I don't have a camera. I guess I don't have a camera phone. How am I going to get pictures onto my eBay account of this jewelry? And so she's using a scanner bed. So what is your favorite way to hold pieces while setting the stone? I use Thermolock almost all the time in a multi-purpose vise from GRS. So the multi-purpose vise kind of mounts onto your bench pin area. It's like you have to get the convertible situation for that. But you could use a ball vise. You could use your big table vise if you have a table vise. I used to do that when I didn't have anything fancier. So you have a vise, you have some sort of way to hold the thing in a fixed spot. And then the Thermolock, you kind of create a T pad, right? So you've got the part that goes into the vise and the part that holds the jewelry. And I use Thermolock, heat it up, put the thing that I'm going to be stone setting in there, make sure it's affixed, and then kind of start going to set my stones from there. I think each job kind of has its own requirements for how specifically something needs to be held. I may even just hold it in my hands if I need to kind of be delicate or ginger with it. But usually Thermolock is the way that I'm holding on to stuff. What is a good way to hold earrings with posts for stone setting? Thermolock. Because you can heat it up and it becomes kind of like a very plasticky, formable, moldable material. You can just submerge the whole wire right into the Thermolock, and you don't have to worry about it breaking off or falling off, because it's just being suspended underneath. And then you just are heating up the material with a heat gun. So it's never really getting so hot that your stones won't be really affected, So Thermolock is kind of, they also have jet. Is it jet set? Is it jet something? GRS makes Thermolock. It's a gray plastic. There is also a white plastic from Rio, their proprietary blend, Jet Set, Jet Ballistic. I also don't know the difference. For me, I think you can do it with both. I can't be sure, but I don't like getting the plastic stuff wet. Like, a lot of them recommend that you submerge it in wet water, hot water, and then let it get hot, and then it becomes moldable. I really don't like the wet plastic. So what I do is I use the microwave to heat it up, or the heat gun to heat it up. And those are kind of my preferred methods. Struggling with how to protect the post while setting a heavy bezel.
Wet water.
Stop that. I'm sorry. So, Meredith, can you hop onto the call real quick and and explain to me what you're having a problem with?
Wet water. Cal, like right behind me.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, I'm being trolled from the other room.
Yeah, I guess like the things that I've and I'm like a total beginner, amateur hack, whatever you want to say, but I have trouble with trying to protect the post of the earring because there's like no place to put it, like versus when you're setting a pendant and you can just like securely put it into the thermal lock. Like, how do you protect the post? Do you have to like dig a hole out for it, or
what you need to do is you have to heat up the thermal lock more thoroughly, right? So thermal lock, it doesn't just automatically become warm in the center, right? Not unless you're microwaving it, which is you have to have a pad and whatever. But if you're going to use the heat gun, you have to kind of go low and slow so that it gets melty all the way in. And then what you'll be able to do is just push the ear wire all the way in slowly.
Okay.
And then you kind of push it up around whatever the rest of the earring is, right? So if it's just up to the sides of the bezel or a little part where it's connecting on jump ring, some way to hold it, you can do that. And it just takes longer to heat up and it takes longer to cool down to the point where you can start setting your stone. So you're dealing with a finer piece, a finer mechanism. You need to have more patience and just let it take the time that it needs. And if that means, I'm going to put this aside and I'm going to come back to it later in a half an hour, or I'm going to toss this into the refrigerator and let it cool down in the fridge so that it can be quicker. You just have to give it more time to heat up so that it can penetrate all the way into the center where you're trying to shove a half-inch ear wire.
So you might need to mound it up higher too then to be able to make that space for it.
Right. You're going to have to kind of create that space for the material to exist. And that's the fun thing about Thermalock is you're not stuck with the dimensions that it exists in. You get to create how it's shaped.
True, yeah.
Use it for exactly what you need it to do. So that is what I would do. Like, I know that you're doing most of that in a classroom setting, so the patience factor could be a little bit more like more difficult, but just as long as you're making sure to, mound it up, adjust it, cool it off, come back to it, and then when you're done with it, you can just push it all back down so that it's ready for the next student to use in a more traditional manner. That's what I would do.
Perfect. I need to do it this weekend, so.
Awesome. Well, I want to see how that looks.
Appreciate it. I will send you pics.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have any more questions before I sign off? I think I'm going to cut it off at 8:30.
I just wanted to say thank you for doing this. I so appreciate it.
Oh, well, you're welcome.
And I'm sorry I was late. I had to run some errands for my family.
Oh, no, that's fine. I'm going to make the recording available. So whatever was missed, people can come and just watch it on YouTube as soon as I can get it up there. So I'll send out another email saying, hey guys, like here's the link. You can watch that video. I am going to be trying to do these kind of like once a month, and either they will be just me being helpful, or they're going to be me and other Smiths being helpful on various more specific topics. Less of a catch-all, let's talk about everything, and more of a let's talk about this. So trying to make a habit of that and trying to just be more approachable. I think that the Zoom versus an Instagram Live is a little bit more controllable in a sense. I've got length, and I can record it all, and I can then share it to you guys. So I think that kind of taking the conversation off the social media and bringing it to a space where we can actually be together and work through whatever it is that we're all trying to learn is a lot more fun and useful. So
it's so fun. I've really, really enjoyed this.
Awesome. Well, thank you. All
I've
right.
never even made jewelry before. I'm just just now looking to start out. So.
Oh, well, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
I think out of all of the Smiths here, I think about half of the people here I've taught in one way or another, either personally or become pretty. Actually, at this point, there's 8 of you, so I think with the exception of Sarah, I think I've kind of taught a lesson of some sort to everybody here. So always happy to be helpful, and jewelry is, it's a super exciting world to get into, and it's just kind of about finding what you want to learn and how you want to go about it, and kind of just getting started somewhere.
Mm-hmm. It's exciting. I'm excited to kind of dive into the world more.
Very cool.
Oh, everybody's so sweet in the chat.
They are. They're absolutely people.
That's precious. I love it.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight, giving me plenty to talk about. If I didn't tackle something that you wanted to hear about, let me know, and I can either pop it up on Instagram or just respond to your email. You guys all got the links, so you know how to get in touch with me. But as I said, I will send out this recording as soon as I kind of get it up online. I've got a Marquis Jewelry Academy YouTube page now going, so that's where this will be for later. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much, Emily. This
Thank
was
you.
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Good night.